If you're looking to add more greenery to your space, but you don't necessarily have the best levels of natural light in your home, here are some houseplants for you to try. When we talk about low light houseplants, the first two plants we're going to talk about today are the snake plant and the ZZ plant. These two are probably the most common plants that you're going to hear people talking about when referring to plants that are tolerant of lower light. The main thing to remember with these two is that you want to let the soil fully dry out between watering. Less light means that the plants are going to take longer to absorb the water in the soil, and we want to avoid root rot at all costs. So as I say, let the plant fully dry out in between waterings. Signs that your plant might be receiving too low a light include either no growth at all, or maybe in the case of this snake plant, rather skinny stems. I don't mind that from time to time, so this one's receiving quite low light in my kitchen. If you notice that your plant is producing skinny stems like this, then you may want to move it to a brighter spot in your home. Other signs that your plant isn't receiving enough light might be things like rotting stems or yellowing leaves. It's always best just to keep an eye on your houseplants and monitor them, and if you think they're looking unhealthy, then move them to a brighter spot. The next plant is this one here, the Boston fern. And this one lives on my north-facing windowsill in my kitchen. And as you can see, despite the fact that it's a north-facing windowsill, and it is getting a direct view of the sky, but it's not going to be that kind of light intensity that you're going to get in other brighter aspects. And this one is still popping out some lovely new growth here. So I know this plant is receiving enough light. If you have this plant several meters back from a north-facing windowsill, you're probably going to notice that the amount of growth that you receive on this plant is going to be a lot less. And you also might notice that the leaves that are coming in might not look as healthy as these ones here. The most important thing to make sure that you're also checking is watering. Now, these are thirsty plants, but if your plant isn't receiving a lot of light, then you may need to make sure that you are checking the soil before you water them. If you have your Boston fern further back from the window, then you do need to think about reducing the waterings. It's always best to check the soil before you water your plant. I like to use a wooden skewer like this one here. Simply insert it into the soil, move it around, pull it out, and if there is wet soil on the wooden skewer, then you don't need to give your plant a drink, and you can leave it a few more days and then check back. In this case here, I can see that this is actually really dry here. I would take this Boston fern to the sink and give it a really good drink until all the water is draining out the bottom before I place it back in its decorative pot. You can also place this in a bowl of water and let the drainage holes soak up the water. You can leave it for around about 20 minutes until the soil is fully saturated, and then again place it back in its decorative pot. Next up, we have the Dracaena or dragon tree. These plants are really tolerant of multiple light levels. They would prefer probably something around that medium bright light, but they are tolerant of lower light situations and are incredibly hardy. Again, you do want to make sure that you're using your wooden skewer, inserting it into the soil, and making sure that this plant is at least around about 80% dry between waterings, especially if you do have it in that lower light levels. Some signs that your plant is probably wanting to have more light would be an increased amount of yellow leaves. If it's the odd yellow leaf at the bottom here, that's nothing to worry about. You can simply remove those quickly with your fingers. But if you suddenly notice there's a lot of yellow leaves, or that the middle of the plant is actually producing leaves that are black or brown, then that is a sign that your plant is receiving too low light. Next up is the Yucca plant, and again, these plants are incredibly hardy. Now, this is a succulent, so it would definitely prefer a brighter spot in your home, but as long as you're managing the watering and you've got it in a nice, well-draining soil mix, these plants are tolerant of those lower light situations. The main thing to watch out for is you do, again, like I say, want to make sure the soil is completely dry before you water it, but when you do go to water it, take it to the sink and give it a really good thorough drink. These plants can be prone to root rot, so you do want to make sure that the soil is fully dry out, and you don't want to be combining low light with too much watering. It is important with your plants receiving, all your plants, but especially those in lower light, that you are maximising the amount of light they can receive so they can photosynthesize. These plants do get really, really dusty, so either take it to the shower when it's dual watering and give it a really good spritz, or just take a dry microfiber cloth and simply dust the leaves. If you notice that your stem is quite wobbly like this one, that's a really good time for you to pull out the plant from the pot, check on the root system, see perhaps if it needs to be actually downsized. And when you do go to repot it, you want to be putting in a nice, well-draining soil mix. You want something like a mixture of houseplant compost, perlite, pumice, and sand. The reason to downsize your plants would be when you pull the plant out of the pot, you need to assess the root system and the size of the root system. You don't want those roots sitting in too much soil because that will increase the chance of something like root rot. So pull the plant out of its plastic nursery pot, take a really good look at the root system, and then you want to make sure you've got it planted in a pot that's around about 1 to maximum 2 inches bigger than the root ball. So light doesn't just affect how much your plant is growing, but also can affect the size of the leaves. With this Monstera, for example, when it's in its juvenile form, you'll notice that there is no fenestrations on the leaf, but as the plant matures, you're going to start getting these fenestrations that you can see here. And with a good amount of light, you're going to get secondary and tertiary fenestrations as well. If your Monstera has leaves that look like this, that are quite small without any fenestrations, these splits in the leaves, then you may want to think about increasing the light levels. These Monstera are happiest in that bright indirect light sweet spot. And as you increase the light, you're going to notice not only do the leaves get bigger, but also that the fenestrations will become more obvious. And as I say, you might then get those secondary and tertiary fenestrations as well. If you notice that your leaves are actually bleaching and becoming more light green or even like with that tinge of yellow, that is a sign that your plant is actually receiving too much light. If you're looking for trailing plants that are tolerant of lower light to give your house that jungle vibe, then here are 2 really good options. The Rhaphidophora tetrasperma, often referred to as a mini Monstera, even though it's not actually a Monstera, and this, the golden pothos. Now, the things that you might notice is that they grow slightly slower and potentially the leaf size might be smaller, but I still think that they're a fantastic option for those lower light areas of your home. You do want to make sure that you are dusting those leaves. As you can see, this one is a little bit dusty here, so I'm going to give it a dust right now. I've already mentioned some signs that your plant might be requiring higher levels of light, such as things like smaller leaves or no growth at all. But some other things to look out for are things like your plant producing runners in terms of vining plants like a pothos or scindapsus, where the plant puts out a vine with no leaves on it at all. Other things might be things like mold or mushrooms growing in your soil, and this can also be related to bad airflow. And the last thing to look out for is if you have a variegated plant that's in a low light area, you may notice that the plant loses its variegation, and for green plants, you may notice that they're just losing their vibrancy a lot. It can be really difficult to measure light levels with the naked eye, and so if you're wanting to maybe up your houseplant game, then you can purchase one of these from like a garden centre, or they're available online. And this is a light meter. It comes with the ability to measure either in lux, LUX, or FC foot candles. And foot candles is generally the term that houseplant experts use to measure light. To use your light meter, you're simply going to take off the case here, and then you're going to turn it on, select foot candles, and place it against the leaf of your plant. It's then going to give you a reading in foot candles. For bright direct light, we're looking at 500 foot candles upwards. For medium bright light, we're looking between that 100 and 500 foot candles bracket. And for lower light, we're looking between 25 and 100 foot candles. Really, anything under 25 foot candles isn't enough for your houseplant to maintain itself. Another thing to consider is actually grow lights. Grow lights have come an awful long way in the last 5 years and are much more aesthetic and neat than they used to be. You can literally buy a grow bulb that fits into an existing lamp in your home, or you can buy some really sleek strip grow lights that can sit underneath a shelf and provide light for the plants below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more great houseplant advice from BBC Gardener's World magazine.